New York City, 1974. ABC Sports Studio. Muhammad Ali was scheduled for a live television interview with Howard Cosell. Should have been routine. Should have been standard. Ali and Cosell had done hundreds of interviews together over the years. They had a relationship, had chemistry, had history. Cosell had been one of the few mainstream journalists who supported Ali during his exile, who defended his right to refuse the draft, who treated him fairly when most of America wanted him destroyed. They were friends, or so Ali thought. But something had changed. Ali had just lost to Joe Frazier, had suffered his first professional defeat, had been knocked down in the 15th round, had lost his unbeaten record, had lost his mystique of invincibility, and suddenly the media that had built him up wanted to tear him down, wanted to see if the great Muhammad Ali could be broken, wanted to test if losing had humbled him, wanted to know if defeat had finally shut his mouth. Cosell was different now, could sense it, could feel it in how the interview was being set up, the questions that were planned, the angle they wanted. This wasn't going to be a friendly conversation between two men who respected each other. This was going to be something else, something harder, something designed to get a reaction, to create a moment, to prove that Muhammad Ali, without his undefeated record, was just another fighter who'd been exposed. The cameras went live, millions watching across America. Primetime television. Big audience, big moment. Ali sat across from Cosell in the studio, relaxed, confident, still the same Ali despite the loss, still the same personality, still the same man who'd captivated the world with his words as much as his fists. Cosell started friendly, warm introduction, talked about Ali's career, his achievements, his impact on boxing. Standard opening, standard setup, getting comfortable, getting the audience engaged, getting Ali comfortable before the real questions started, before the trap was sprung. Then Cosell shifted, tone changed, expression changed, body language changed, from friendly colleague to aggressive interrogator, from supportive journalist to hostile prosecutor. The switch was visible, deliberate, calculated. This was the real interview starting now. "Muhammad," Cosell said, voice different, harder. "You've spent years telling everyone you're the greatest. You've talked and talked and talked about how nobody could beat you. How you were untouchable, how you were the best fighter who ever lived. You made predictions, you wrote poems, you guaranteed victory. You built an entire persona around being unbeatable. And then Joe Frazier knocked you down, beat you, proved you wrong. So my question is simple. Now that you've been exposed as beatable, now that everyone knows you're not invincible, now that the world has seen you on the canvas, are you still the greatest? Or was that just talk? Just hype? Just a persona you created to sell tickets? Were you ever really the greatest? Or were you just very good at convincing people you were?" The studio went quiet. The question hung in the air. Harsh, aggressive, designed to hurt, designed to humiliate, designed to make Ali either admit he'd been lying or defend a claim that looked foolish after losing. Designed to put Ali in a position where any answer made him look bad, either a fraud who'd been exposed or a delusional fighter who couldn't accept reality. Ali looked at Cosell, really looked at him, studied his face, saw the hostility, saw the agenda, saw that this wasn't his friend asking a tough question. This was someone trying to tear him down on national television, someone trying to use their platform to humiliate him, someone who thought losing one fight meant Ali could be broken. But Ali didn't get angry, didn't get defensive, didn't react the way Cosell clearly wanted him to react. Instead, he smiled. That Muhammad Ali smile. The one that said he knew something you didn't. The one that said he was 3 steps ahead. The one that said he was about to say something that would change everything. "Howard," Ali said, voice calm, controlled, certain. "Let me tell you something about being the greatest. And let me educate you, because clearly you don't understand what that word means." Ali leaned forward, made direct eye contact with Cosell, made sure Cosell understood this was serious now. This wasn't banter. This wasn't entertainment. This was truth. You think losing one fight means I'm not the greatest? You think one defeat erases everything I've done? You think Joe Frazier beating me proves I was lying all these years? That shows you don't understand boxing, don't understand greatness, don't understand what I've been saying. Ali's voice grew stronger, more passionate, more powerful. The words coming faster now. The response that would silence Cosell being constructed in real time. I never said I'd never lose. I said I'm the greatest. Those are two different things. The greatest doesn't mean perfect. The greatest doesn't mean unbeatable. The greatest means when you add it all up, when you look at the whole picture, when you measure skill and heart and impact and what you bring to the sport, I'm the greatest who ever did it. Still am. One loss doesn't change that. Cosell tried to interrupt, tried to push back, tried to maintain control of his own show. But Ali wasn't done, was just getting started, was about to deliver a verbal combination that would leave Cosell as finished as any opponent Ali had knocked out in the ring. You want to talk about that loss, Howard? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the whole truth instead of the story you're trying to tell. I fought Joe Frazier after 3.5 years away from boxing. 3.5 years the government stole from me because I wouldn't fight in their war. 3.5 years of my prime, the best years of my career, gone, because I stood up for what I believed in, because I refused to compromise my principles, because I chose to be stripped of my title rather than be drafted into a war I didn't believe in. The passion in Ali's voice was building, the conviction, the power. This wasn't just defending his boxing record. This was defending his entire life, his choices, his sacrifices, his legacy. When I came back after those stolen years, I wasn't the same fighter I was before the government banned me from doing what I loved. I wasn't as fast as I'd been at 25, wasn't as sharp as I'd been in my absolute prime, wasn't as young and fresh as I'd been when I destroyed Liston. 3.5 years is a lifetime in boxing, Howard. You know that better than anyone. Everyone watching knows that. Those were my peak years. 25 to 28. The years when fighters are at their absolute best. The years when reflexes are sharpest, when speed is fastest, when power is strongest. And I spent them fighting the United States government in courtrooms instead of fighting opponents in boxing rings. Spent them watching other fighters take what should have been mine. Spent them wondering if I'd ever get to box again. Spent them sacrificing my career for my principles. Ali's voice grew even more powerful, the words coming from somewhere deep, from a place of truth that couldn't be denied, from years of fighting battles that had nothing to do with boxing and everything to do with dignity and principle and standing up for what you believe, even when it costs you everything. So when I finally got back in the ring and fought Joe Frazier, I wasn't at my best. I was good. I was still Ali. I was still dangerous. I was still skilled. But I wasn't prime Ali. I wasn't the Ali who destroyed Sonny Liston in one round. I wasn't the Ali who made champions look like amateurs. I wasn't the Ali who would have fought Frazier in 1967 when I was unbeatable. I was an Ali who'd been away from the sport during the most important years of his career. An Ali who'd lost 3.5 years of development, 3.5 years of fighting, 3.5 years of getting better. An Ali who'd been forced to start over at an age when most fighters are at their peak, and I was having to rebuild what the government had taken from me. Ali paused. Let that sink in. Let the audience understand the magnitude of what had been stolen from him. Let them understand that talking about his loss to Frazier, without mentioning the exile, was telling a story without including the most important chapter. And even then, Howard, even not at my best, even after all that time away, even having to rebuild my career from scratch at an age when I should have been defending my title, even with all those disadvantages, I almost beat Joe Frazier. The fight went 15 rounds, all 15 rounds. It was close, It was competitive. It was a war. I lost, yes. I got knocked down, yes. But I wasn't dominated. I wasn't destroyed. I wasn't exposed as a fraud. I was Muhammad Ali, fighting at 75% of my capacity against a great champion who was at 100% of his capacity, and I almost won. That doesn't make me less great. That makes the loss understandable. That makes my greatness even more impressive, because I came that close despite everything working against me. Cosell's expression had changed completely now. The hostility that had started the interview was gone, vanished, replaced by something else entirely. Realization maybe. Understanding that he'd made a serious miscalculation. That trying to humiliate Muhammad Ali on live television in front of millions of viewers was a mistake. That Ali's response wasn't just defending himself. It was creating a moment, a legendary moment, the kind of television that would be remembered and replayed for decades. And that Ali's words, not Cosell's attack, were going to be the story. That this interview would be remembered not for the attempted humiliation, but for how brilliantly Ali had responded to it. But Ali still wasn't finished with his response, was building to something even more powerful, was about to make a point that would define not just this interview, but how people thought about success and failure and what it means to be great, was about to articulate something that millions of people watching needed to hear, something that would resonate far beyond boxing, something universal about the human experience. And here's what you're missing, Howard. Here's what you and everyone like you who wants to tear people down don't understand. Here's what all those people who wait for someone to fail so they can say, "See, I told you they weren't that great," don't comprehend. Losing to Joe Frazier doesn't make me not the greatest. It makes me human. It makes me real. It makes my greatness more impressive, not less. Because the greatest isn't someone who never faces adversity. The greatest is someone who faces adversity and overcomes it. The greatest is someone who gets knocked down and gets back up. The greatest is someone who loses and learns and comes back stronger and better and more determined. Ali's voice carried absolute conviction now. This wasn't defensive. This wasn't justification. This was teaching. This was Ali using this platform, this attack, this attempt to humiliate him, to teach millions of people watching a lesson about life that transcended sports, a lesson about resilience, about refusing to let other people's definitions become your reality. You want to know if I'm still the greatest, Howard? Here's my answer. Yes. Absolutely yes. Without question, yes. I was the greatest before I lost to Joe Frazier. I'm the greatest right now sitting here after losing to Joe Frazier. And I'll still be the greatest when I beat Joe Frazier in our inevitable rematch and become heavyweight champion of the world again. Which I will do. I promise you that. I guarantee it. I'm telling you right now, on live television, in front of millions of people. I will beat Joe Frazier. I will reclaim my championship. I will prove that this loss was just a temporary setback. Just one chapter in a much longer story. Just a moment that made me better instead of breaking me. Ali's voice was steady now, certain, absolute, speaking truth that couldn't be argued with, couldn't be dismissed, couldn't be spun into something else. You want to know if I'm still the greatest, Howard? Ask me that question again after I beat Joe Frazier in the rematch. Ask me that question after I reclaim my title. Ask me that question after I prove that losing one fight was just a chapter in my story, not the end of my story. Ask me that question when I'm heavyweight champion of the world again. And I will be, Howard. I promise you that. I will be champion again. And when I am, you'll remember this interview. You'll remember trying to humiliate me. You'll remember trying to break me. And you'll remember that Muhammad Ali doesn't break. Muhammad Ali doesn't quit. Muhammad Ali doesn't let one loss define him. The studio was silent, completely silent. Cosell had nothing to say. No response, no comeback, no way to spin this. Ali had taken the attempt to humiliate him and turned it into a moment of inspiration, had taken hostility and transformed it into motivation, had taken an attack and made it an opportunity to show the world who he really was. Relaxed again, the intensity gone, replaced by calm, by certainty, by the confidence of someone who just won a fight without throwing a single punch. I'm the greatest, Howard. I was the greatest before I lost to Joe Frazier. I'm the greatest after losing to Joe Frazier. And I'll be the greatest when I beat Joe Frazier and become champion again. Losing doesn't change that. It confirms it. Because the greatest isn't afraid of losing. The greatest learns from it, grows from it, uses it. That's what separates me from everyone else. Not that I don't lose, that I don't let losing stop me. Cosell finally found words, but they weren't the words he'd planned, weren't the follow-up questions designed to continue the humiliation, were something else entirely. Muhammad, Cosell said, voice softer now, different. That was extraordinary. That was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard anyone say on television. You've reminded me why I've always believed you're special, not just as a fighter, as a person, as someone who represents something bigger than boxing. The interview continued for another 15 minutes, but the defining moment was over. The attempt to humiliate Ali had failed spectacularly, had backfired in the most complete way possible, had become a moment that showed Ali's greatness in a completely different dimension than boxing, showed his mind, showed his heart, showed his ability to take the worst someone could throw at him verbally and turn it into something inspiring, something powerful, something that would be remembered long after the boxing matches were forgotten. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Phones at ABC started ringing within minutes. Viewers calling to say they'd just watched something extraordinary, something that transcended sports, something that felt important beyond entertainment. Letters poured in over the following weeks, thousands of them. People writing to say that Ali's words had moved them, had inspired them, had helped them understand their own failures differently, had given them permission to lose without being defined by losing. The interview became legendary in television history, not for Cosell's attack, which was forgotten almost immediately, for Ali's response, for the way he defended himself with intelligence and passion, defended his legacy with words as powerful as any punch he'd ever thrown, defended his greatness by redefining what greatness meant, for the way he'd taken hostility and transformed it into something transcendent, something true, something that resonated with everyone watching who'd ever been knocked down in any aspect of life and had to decide whether to stay down or get back up. Sports writers who'd been skeptical of Ali found themselves writing columns praising not his boxing, but his intellect, his ability to articulate complex truths under hostile pressure, his capacity to turn an attack into an opportunity, his understanding that greatness isn't about never failing, but about how you respond to failure. The interview was replayed, analyzed, studied, used in communications classes, in leadership seminars, in motivational contexts far beyond sports. Years later, long after both men's careers had ended, Cosell talked about that interview with genuine remorse and newfound respect, admitted publicly that he'd been wrong to try to humiliate Ali the way he had, admitted he'd underestimated Ali's intelligence and his ability to articulate complex truths under pressure, admitted that trying to break Muhammad Ali verbally was as futile as trying to break him physically. Ali was too smart, too strong, too committed to his own truth to let anyone else define him or his legacy. I thought I could corner him mentally, Cosell confessed in a 1985 interview. I thought losing to Frazier had weakened him somehow, made him vulnerable, made him susceptible to being questioned about his greatness, made him doubtful about his own claims. I was completely wrong about all of it. All I did was give him a platform to explain what greatness really means to millions of people who needed to hear it. To show that greatness isn't about never failing. It's about how you respond to failure. About refusing to let failure define you. Muhammad taught me that lesson that day, taught everyone watching that lesson. And he did it with such grace and power and intelligence that I should have expected from him, but somehow didn't in that moment. It remains one of my greatest regrets in journalism, not asking the question, but asking it the way I did, with hostility instead of curiosity, with the intent to diminish instead of understand. Ali did exactly what he promised in that interview. Beat Joe Frazier in the rematch, then beat George Foreman to reclaim the heavyweight championship. Became the first man to regain the heavyweight title after losing it. Proved that his response to Cosell wasn't just words, was prediction, was promise, was truth. The lesson from that interview resonates decades later. People will try to humiliate you when you're down, will try to make you admit you were never as good as you said you were, will try to break you when you're vulnerable, will use your defeats to define you,
will try to make you smaller than you are. But you don't have to accept their definition. Don't have to let their narrative become your truth. Don't have to let losing mean you were never great. You can respond with intelligence, with truth, with the understanding that greatness isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, about resilience,
about getting back up, about learning, about growing, about proving that one defeat doesn't define you. Your response to defeat defines you. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that losing doesn't make them a failure. Subscribe for more stories about intelligence winning battles. And remember, Howard Cosell tried to humiliate Muhammad Ali on live television by questioning his greatness after a loss. Ali responded with such power and truth that Cosell had nothing to say. That's greatness, not never losing, responding to loss with intelligence and determination to come back stronger.